Good evening. My name is Benjamin Oakes, and it is an absolute pleasure to be back here at UC Berkeley, where I did my PhD. I love UC. Go Bears. And today, I'm going to change it up a little bit. We're going to talk about the future of medicine. So to begin, I want you all to imagine walking into your doctor's office. Think about what that process usually looks like. Now, I want you to imagine walking into your doctor's office and walking out a changed person, a healthy person, healthier at least. Imagine you could walk into your doctor's office and get a one-and-done treatment that could potentially modify, maybe even cure your heart disease, diabetes, obesity, whatever it may be. That means no more pill every morning or every night, no shot every day or every week, no infusion every month. Sounds pretty incredible, right? I mean, come on. It also sounds incredibly difficult to do with where we are in our current field of medicine. And therefore, it seems like it's like, all right, Ben, it's incredibly far in the future. I get it. But it's not. This is the future of healthcare today. In fact, it is the reality of healthcare today, made possible by genome editing molecules such as CRISPR. Our health no longer need be dictated by our own genetic destiny. We now have the tools and technologies that will allow us to write our own stories to longer and healthier lives. So, what does genetic destiny actually mean in this context? I'm sure many of you know and have heard about evolution and the survival of the fittest, and therefore you think that maybe all of our genes are perfect. But I'm here to tell you today that that's not the case. It's far from it. Evolution is not survival of the fittest. It's survival of the just fit enough. And so what we see very often in evolution are things you can imagine or you could characterize as evolutionary hangovers. Genetics and evolution, they have a night on the town, they have a great time, they build a couple new genes, and then 100,000 years later, we're all paying for it. And that's because those genes, those traits, no longer suit the current environment that we live in. So this genetic adaptation, that is a constant process that we're watching and we can see and observe. But humans are really great at modifying our own environment. And we are now changing our own environment much faster than our genetic adaptations can keep up. An interesting example of this is actually the gene that's responsible for sickle cell disease. So some of you may be aware of this, but this is a single change in the genome. And if you have one copy of this change, it's actually potentially protective. It can help prevent bloodborne pathogens and a severe form of malaria. However, if our genetics overindulges again, and you have two copies of this gene, you now have sickle cell disease. So researchers have been very successful in finding many of these imperfections, and they're finding more and more, really every week and every day now. But nevertheless, traditional medicine has really focused on treating symptoms and not these causes. So I'm sure many of you have taken a pill before or know someone who takes a pill every day. Very often, this targets really the most downstream aspects of our biology, proteins. Now, recent advances are allowing us to move more upstream in this process towards, for example, mRNA, or utilize mRNA, and the COVID vaccines, of course, are a good example of this. But it is only recently that we finally have the ability to target the underlying code of disease, or our own genome. And it is only with this that we are now finally able to go from disease treatment to disease transformation. Again, CRISPR and genome editing technologies are what is allowing us to rewrite the story of disease. So, let's take a step back. I know, I said CRISPR now twice, and I have not explained it, right? I'm sure many of you have heard of CRISPR because it is a technology that was co-invented by our very own Nobel Prize-winning UC Berkeley scientist and my PhD mentor, Jennifer Doudna. And if you know that, I'm sure you also understand that CRISPR is a technology that allows us to essentially build a molecule that can target nearly any location of the genome in nearly any organism. It's incredible. It's programmable. It's efficient. But what I bet you don't know is the fact that these CRISPR systems are actually bacterial immune systems. They're what bacteria uses to fight off viruses. And because of that, they're not genome editing tools. They have shortcomings. Now, despite this, they are changing healthcare, they are changing agriculture, medicine, biotechnology. Anything that in any way touches biology is changed by the ability of CRISPR to programmably modify the genome. And in fact, CRISPR genome editing has moved now from bench to bedside in just over a decade. Recently, we have gotten approvals in the US and Europe for a treatment for that disease I was talking about earlier, sickle cell. Now, if you have seen this data, it is amazing. It's transformative. It appears to be nothing short of a functional cure. And I believe that more cures are possible if we can really engineer these bacterial immune systems into more perfect genome editing scalpels. So, I believe this, of course. I've been working on this. I've been working on this for a very long time. I actually started out working on engineering genome editing tools for over a decade ago, back BC, or before CRISPR technology. Yeah. That's actually what it stands for now. When Jennifer published her seminal work in 2012, though, I immediately saw the value in this technology and moved out to UC Berkeley to work with Jennifer Doudna, as well as another UC Berkeley professor, Dave Savage. In their labs, I worked on engineering a number of really interesting and unique CRISPR molecules that could do all sorts of things, many of which you could see here. And when I graduated, I became one of the first Innovative Genomics Institute's entrepreneurial fellows. And in that process, I honed my mission with a real focus on unlocking the potential now of genetic medicine by engineering CRISPR specifically for that goal. What this means is really taking these bacterial immune systems, melting down this natural material, and reforging it into the more perfect genome editing scalpel that can cut more specifically, more actively, can be more easily delivered. And our ultimate goal is to create genetic medicines that are safe and effective enough to be used at scale. No longer are we thinking just about treating rare disease, but how do we bring genetic medicine to each and every one of you in a way that can more meaningfully impact your life? The ultimate goal here is really creating treatments that have the potential to be a standard of care. The first treatment, potentially, that you can get. And so we blueprinted a company called Scribe and an approach called CRISPR by Design. Again, co-founded by myself, Jennifer Doudna, Dave Savage, as well as Brett Stahl. And our goal has been to engineer these genome editing tools to be more potent, safe, and effective. So what does CRISPR by Design actually look like? How do we do this? How do we make a more effective genome editing tool? What we actually have done is we can look at tens of thousands to tens of millions of different possibilities, test each one, track whether or not that modification improves the system or hurts the system. We can then incorporate all of these changes into a single, more perfect genome editing tool. An interesting way to think about this is that we are essentially doing holistic molecular engineering at the nanoscale to transform human health at the macro scale. I mean, talk about a butterfly effect here, right? Now, with CRISPR by design enabling us to create safer and more effective tools, the question becomes, where do we apply these technologies? And so I have a question for the audience now. If you know, or you yourself have been affected by cardiovascular disease or heart disease, or someone in your family has, or you know someone who has, please raise your hand. All right, I want everyone to look around now. Keep your hands up, come on, come on. This room is so full of hands, even the people who are like this. Because cardiovascular disease, you can put them down now, thank you. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death globally. It has much less fanfare than things like cancer, but it beats it out almost 2 to 1. And so this really seemed like the area that we could have the most impact. Now, of course, cardiovascular disease has a standard of care. What is known as LDL-C, or bad cholesterol, is a key contributing factor of cardiovascular disease, and there are pills that we can take to lower our bad cholesterol. But really, only less than 50% of people can remain on these treatments, this standard of care, for a long period of time. And this is why we have over 2 billion people globally who still have high cholesterol. Now, on the flip side of this, we do understand the genetics that allow us to modify and lower bad cholesterol. And if we could use that knowledge to lower LDL-C by greater than 50%, we could have a meaningful impact on cardiovascular disease and heart attacks globally. If we did that in the United States alone, we would save over $25 billion in costs to the healthcare system each year. Now, at Scribe, we set out to do this, and lo and behold, we have been quite successful. By engineering CRISPR tools to be more potent and safe, what we have been able to demonstrate clearly in large animal models is that we can reduce cholesterol levels by over 50%, and that this treatment is stable now, out for 6 months. This is exciting because this has the potential to become a new standard of care for anyone who has had a heart attack and potentially, in the future, who's at risk for cardiovascular disease. So this is a testament to what the future of genetic medicine can look like. We no longer are going to be limited to just treating rare diseases, which must be treated as well, but also to creating standard of care treatments for the broadest diseases possible, enabling all of us to think about writing our own stories rather than just inheriting them. And so the fascinating question I want you all to think about is, what does that future look like for each of you? Now, I want to end by saying this is a deeply personal mission for me. My father, who you can see here, has had 3 heart attacks. First one was at the age of 40. I still remember having to carve my own Pinewood Derby car while he was in the hospital. And I often think about what would have been different. How would his life be different today if he had been treated with the therapy like this immediately after that first heart attack? Could we have avoided his second heart attack, his third? If we had treated him earlier, could we have avoided even his first? It's certainly possible. And I think about this even more because I share that same genetic destiny, and so does my son. I'm sure many of you share these same questions. And so once again, I ask, how do you think that genetic medicine such as this could impact your lives or the lives of your loved ones? And how do we ensure that that future comes to be? Now, the good news is that we are working on this each and every day to give each of us the ability to rewrite our own genetic destiny. There will be a future in which you can visit your doctor and walk out healthier. I am sure of that. Perhaps we even get rid of the paradigm of taking a handful of pills in the morning and a handful of pills at night. Wouldn't that be great? But to get there, we have to engineer not only our own biology, but the tools that allow us to engineer that biology. And this is what I am deeply committed and passionate about. and we are dedicated to at Scribe, engineering a more empowered future for us all. Thank you.